feelings. I have emotions. I am a human. But in all seriousness, I am super excited to talk to my
Humans
guest.
don't say that, Mike. Humans don't say that.
I am super excited to talk. He spoiled it. He's here. And you know what? He's coming home. I rocked the Bellator gear for him. I'm super excited to talk to the one and only Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith, you announced in the past week that you're returning to Bellator and Bellator Championship Series. You'll be back on the call in Dublin, Ireland. First and foremost, congrats. Welcome home. I know you said there was never any bad blood, but when you come back to a place where you were for so long, you get a little excited.
Yeah, yeah, you do. But it's also like, dude, I haven't done MMA color in 6 years. It's weird. It's a thing I'm best at. It's a thing I know. I've been in the business and I've done amazing things, right? I call WrestleMania. I've done amazing stuff, but it wasn't like what I'm the best at, which is MMA color commentary, which is kind of funny. Doing boxing right now, that's my daily gig with Pro Box TV, and they've been amazing. Like, I've had a ton of fun doing other stuff, but when I sat back and thought about it, I was like, man, I haven't done MMA color in 6 years. It's the craziest thing ever. So it's also, coming back to a role that made me that I feel I'm best suited for.
And you kind of talked about it with Damon Martin of MMA Fighting. You were like, "Yeah, just called me," and I was like, "Yeah, sounds great." But what was it like though? Now that it's a week removed, what was it like getting that call? Did it feel nice to get that call? Because the business with PFL and Bellator is ever changing, and they may be changing the sport as we know it. So, what was it like now that we're a week from the announcement?
Yeah, it was there was that coming home feeling. And then there's also this, you can't ever go home, where, it's new people. So there's that excitement of it's new people, it's new directors, it's new and all those. It's funny, all the directors and producers I worked with at Bellator when we were on Viacom all texted me and called me, hey man, congratulations. Da, da, da. But they're not all there. So it's also naive and foolish to go, it'll be just like it was. It's going to be totally different than it was, as far as the personnel. But that also makes it kind of cool that it's a bunch of new people, and I have to figure out how their system works and who's there and who's not. Worked with Dan Hardy before. So that comfort level as far as the nuts and bolts of the job. Never worked with Sean O'Connell, but I know him, right? Had him on my SiriusXM show a couple times. So it's that idea of that mix of the familiar and the unfamiliar.
I know we have to wait and find out, see how everything meshes together. But a name you just mentioned, a guy I'm watching here in the background because PFL Newcastle weigh-ins are going on right now, is Sean O'Connell. He was getting praised throughout, the rise of him through PFL broadcasts, and then obviously, of course, Bellator broadcasts. When you have a guy like Sean O'Connell who's been doing kind of all the tricks of the trade, on the commentary desk, and then he's been a world champion, how much fun do you anticipate it'll be working with him?
Oh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I made the transition myself to play by play for boxing and for WWE, and you'll always bring that color side of it, right? Where you can get in the weeds of what's going on because you've been there, and most play by play guys haven't. And so that's a fun thing between Sean O'Connell and Dan Hardy. We're gonna get in the weeds of what's going on all together. It's not gonna be kind of like, hey guys, what do you think is going on? And Sean O'Connell's not an idiot. He knows what's going on. And he's a good play-by-play guy. So he's going to give us those opportunities to shine and talk about what we're great at. But he can also dive in there when there's a technique issue. And that's really fun to do.
Fight fans all over the world are in for a treat when you three are in the booth. And I'm not just saying that because I, have a lot of respect for you, but I just think from a broadcaster's delight, and it's no slight to those who call UFC events, I think you coming back to Bellator takes the commentary booth to another level. I would love to see you call PFL in the future as well with that team. I think it'll be great for business. I know you said it's just Bellator right now, but eventually would you be open to the PFL?
Oh, I'm open to anything, man. It's not, you don't get far in this business going like, nah, I don't think I'll put, sure, man, we want you to do some PFL stuff. We want you to do this. We want you to host some stuff. We want you to do some death stuff. We want you to do this. I've done everything in this business, Mike. I've done everything you can think of. And so nothing scares me. Nothing makes me go, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I've done every kind of fight you can imagine, man. The first time I ever did commentary, we were in Holland doing an M1 show, and to warm up they did the top 5 on that same show. It's called Slam. They had the top 5 Thai Muay Thai fighters versus the top 5 Dutch Muay Thai fighters, and they go, hey, do you want to call this thing to warm up just because it's on before we're on? I said, sure, I'd love to. Well, I had trained with like 3 of the guys, And so the first thing I ever called was a Muay Thai fight. I had no idea I was going to be calling a Muay Thai fight. I had no idea what was going on. And I went, okay, cool. And I called a Muay Thai fight that, once again, lucky enough, I had trained with a couple of the guys. But sure, I can go in there and do that. I never lost that enthusiasm for like, okay, yeah, sure, man. I know combat sports, man. This is my thing. So throw me in there and I'll give you great content. And Mike, I had never hosted a radio show before SiriusXM ever in my life. I had no radio experience, none at all. And I filled in for Luke, and they went, man, Luke's leaving. You got to be the man full time. And I went, all right. And I'm talking 3 hours by myself every single day about MMA. So you learn. That's how you dive in and learn things. It's just you just jump in and do it, and you figure it out on the way, man.
No, I think you embody someone who can do all combat sports. Now, I'm going to show a little bit of my favoritism here for the event you're returning at. You, like I just said, embody combat sports, but I think outside of the NFL Super Bowl, and we've worked together at SiriusXM, so I've got some crazy opinions. Outside of America's Super Bowl, when it comes to combat sports, remove UFC International Fight Week, remove your biggest headliners. To me, Bellator Dublin is the greatest combat sports event on the calendar year each and every year. Am I way far off there, or am I kind of close?
Dude, the energy in there is crazy, man. It is nuts. It is, and I was very honest about this. When it came to PFL's acquisition of Bellator, because obviously, I'm not going to lie, the people in Bellator are friends of mine. So we were talking about, the fate of Bellator should PFL acquire it when it was kind of in the air. And the main thing that kept getting kind of, talked about between these guys was they're so big in Europe that they might keep Bellator as a separate international European brand. UFC doesn't go there. And these are markets that are starved for that live MMA feeling, right? That big fight feeling. And whenever we would go overseas, especially Dublin, like you said, the place was rocking. I mean, shaking. And I went, man, they really love MMA here. And the UFC doesn't serve this market a whole lot. So that was the first thing I thought is Bellator in Europe, I think would do really, really well. And that's where they're keeping it. And that's where we've had the most energy and the most fans, and we've sold out, and it's been crazy. So I'm really thrilled. Not that I'm also not thrilled to be going to Dublin, Paris, and London. I mean, the cities I love, but the idea that when you're there, those fans appreciate you being there so much. It's crazy.
Let me ask you on that kind of note about Bellator and being in Europe. I mean, we have PFL Europe, we have PFL MENA, we have the PFL
Right.
Global roster. Like you said, it may be best for Bellator to serve almost as another European, promotion. Do you think that's best long term? And then, like this year, they have, I believe it was 8 total events. 6 were in overseas, and 2 are here in the States. Do you think that kind of following that similar schedule keeps them going for years moving forward?
Yeah, that's the question, right? It seems to be doing well from what I'm looking for it as an outsider, but I'm not on the accounting side, I'm not on the bookkeeping side, I'm not, I don't know. So when people talk about what's the best financial goal for the company moving forward, I have no idea. I'm in the weeds of sitting there calling fights, and I know who's there and I know who's excited, and I know how many people are there. Those are the things that key me. And so when you talk about, the fate of the brand, when I'm sitting there, I know where there's energy from fans. I know that. Everything else, I don't know, but it seems like Bellator in Europe as that part of the overall brand strategy seems to be the right way to go.
I definitely agree with you
Yeah.
there. I cannot wait for this. So, how quickly did you jump into studying the card?
You know what's funny? I usually do it about 10 days out. The reason is things change, right? I've done it a million times, man. When I've been studying, a card comes out, I'm like, I'm gonna do all my studying. Like, yeah, so and so is out with an injury, so and so did, so and you're like, Jesus, man, I spent 3 hours watching all that guy's fights, and it didn't work. 10 days, I get asked this all the time, but when do you start studying? About 10 days out, because 2 weeks they start, there's still injuries, they're hard into the weight cut, and they call them like, dude, I'm not gonna make weight, and so I got to study it at 170 instead of 55. 10 days is kind of. By the way, this is my new dog Cookie,
I
so
love it.
he's gonna be jumping into the broadcast because that's how he is. So about 10 days out, so I'm gonna start really studying probably in about maybe the 10th. Yeah.
I mean, there are so many fantastic fights. The main and co-main definitely have me super excited. Jason Jackson, I mean, what a story in MMA for a guy who, like you said, I had never hosted a radio show until SiriusXM. How do you make that transition? Maybe if you can kind of uh, give some insight to hosting a radio show,
Yep.
being full on opinions, and then moving into a commentary booth where you definitely have to have opinions, but you can't just completely be opinionated in the booth. You have to call it how you see it.
Yeah, no, it's that balancing act of you're serving the audience. That's what you're doing. You're serving the audience. You're not, you know, it isn't about your opinion and what you think. It's about the audience. Dogs. It's about what's doing best for the people you're serving. It isn't about you. And I think bad broadcasters too often make it about themselves. And you can't do that. You got to make it about. You have to make it about your the fighters. You have to make it about what's going on in the ring or the octagon or wherever it is. You have to make it about the past and the future of the fights, but you can't also be afraid to go, this guy's getting housed, man. He's not ready to be here. You have to be willing to go, this guy's getting killed if he's getting killed. This guy's doing well if he's doing well. This guy's doing this. This referee is man, I think he dropped the ball with that call. You have to be honest. I think bad broadcasters too often make it about themselves. Here's what I would have done, and here's me. And you're like, dude, it's not that's not how it's supposed to go. So honesty, I've never had a problem with. It's about making about yourself and your opinions more than about the fight itself. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And I definitely agree with you there. And I am going to get your opinion on a couple big things in MMA before I let you go. But you've called WrestleMania. You and I have talked about it in previous interviews. I've already said how I feel about Bellator Dublin. When you know you're getting back into the Bellator booth, we've already said that feeling of returning home. But comparing the two, I know they're completely different. But the energy, the crowd at WrestleMania, just the show that it is, does it really compare to calling MMA fights?
Well, let me put it in two different ways. 77,000 people a day for 2 days at AT&T Stadium, which is where I did WrestleMania. Crowd-wise, there'll never, ever be anything like that. Theatrically, there'll never, ever be anything like that in my career. There's nothing like not knowing. There's nothing like the difference between the WWE and MMA is the difference between winning and earning. If you're a champ in the WWE, you earned it. You spent years honing your craft. You're putting butts in seats. You're doing all this stuff that takes years and years and years to do. But you're going to be champion when you walk into the building. In MMA, when they lock that door and it's either I'm going to live my dream or I can really get seriously hurt, and all of those are on the table, there's nothing like that. So crowd-wise, there's nothing like WrestleMania. There's nothing like it. But to me, you cannot, as well as they do, and they do an amazing job, it's very difficult for me as a former fighter to manufacture that feeling of, dude, this could be great or this could be awful, and I have to be open and do everything I can right now to make that happen. Because that's what happens in real combat sports. So there's nothing like that to me. As amazing as the crowd was and all stuff, calling combat sports where everything's on the line and you don't know which way it's going to work, that's a different feeling altogether.
I know I've told people around me, friends, family, I said there are certain, and I think you know this as a sports fan too, there are sports moments that, in the other four major sports in the States here, where you're like, I'll never forget where I was when I heard that call or whatever. And there are so many moments in MMA. You pick the organization that I put up there with some of those greatest, other sports calls, these calls in the Super Bowl and stuff like that. There are so many calls in MMA because of that reason.
But let me explain something very quickly. The greatest, and I thought it was the greatest when I was watching it, Ricky Steamboat versus Macho Man Savage at WrestleMania 3 is widely considered one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time, right? My old ass saw it live, okay? I remember sitting there just like my jaw hanging out, as amazing as it was. And at the end, Macho Man Savage, when he got pinned by Ricky Steamboat, said in his ear, "We got him, buddy. We got him." I've seen fighters lose fights and just be devastated, where their whole dream, they know they're never going to get there, that this was it, and I'm never going to get back here. And my life just went, whoop, just took a left turn when I thought I was taking a right, That's the difference. Macho Man Savage getting pinned when, oh, we got it. Why? We put on the best show ever. We did it. The fact that he, air quotes, lost wasn't important to him. He put on the greatest show possible. I've seen fighters just mentally and physically collapse after losing a fight that they just, I'll never be champion. I'll never be as good as that guy. And that's the difference, right?
And I think to that point, if you take that moment of a call, I'll say this for my money, it is Leon Edwards coming back head kicking Kamaru Usman. John Anik, that
Huge.
is not the cloth from with you is cut. And then that followed it by the post-fight interview. I just, for me, once you get that call, then you get the interview, the emotions are still high. I don't think anything compares. But I wanted one more question on, you're home again. We've seen how they're basically, and we talked, and I know I'm not trying to dig in and get, insight that you don't have, but from what you've seen, and I'll say from the Sirius XMC, with PFL and Bellator, we're about half a year in of their merger. It's only best for mixed martial arts if they not only survive, but thrive. What do you make of them now working together? I know Don Davis is a co-leader, but it is all best for all parties involved if both sides do well.
For sure. It is. I mean, it's better for everybody. I think also this idea that, there's so much talent now in MMA, trying to shoehorn it into one promotion, no matter how big and great that promotion is always going to be difficult, right? There's always going to be, there's so much talent, there's so many great fighters. To shoehorn them all into one promotion is just going to be difficult. It's going to be really, really difficult. How PFL balances the PFL Bellator split, right? It's almost the takeover days of WCW and WWE, where do we keep them as one brand and it's this brand versus that brand? And I'm kind of a cheerleader for Bellator, kind of, like I'm on the belt. That's kind of fun. It's something we don't see in the UFC at all. So how they manage those two brands, right? Keeping them separate or integrating them slowly, however they do it, I think that's the key to their success over the next couple of years. And that's the question I want to see answered as I'm there is, all right, how do we, is it separate? Is it me versus you, which is kind of cool, right? Are we going to have a desk show where, Dan and I are on the Bellator side, and the other guys on the PFL side? We're arguing about, our guys versus your guys. Is that going to be the format? Or are we going to integrate everything together? That's the question to me.
My public plea right now is you have to be on the call if we do another champs versus champs, PFL versus Bellator. It's exactly what you're talking about, right? In Saudi Arabia, it will be absolutely amazing. And I just look at the guy that we were talking about in the main event, Jason Jackson in Dublin. A guy who worked so hard, and in Chicago,
thought Amasov was the man.
Yeah,
Amasov was the man. And I was like, when I saw him get knocked out, I couldn't believe it. Jason Jackson's so good, yeah.
Everybody press row, just kind of jaw hanging, like, did he really just do that? And then he went back to his landscaping business like 4 days later because he has to keep working. It's one thing I've enjoyed in my last month or so in talking to both sides of PFL and Bellator rosters. These fighters, they have a sense of pride, which I think makes everything so much better, so unique. And I really hope that all parties, both Bellator and PFL, thrive because I think it's better for the sport. I want to get your thoughts on things before I let you go. And obviously the big elephant in the room is Conor McGregor. And as someone, we're recording this on Friday, and you know me. One, I'll never compare to you, but two, I don't pry like other hosts or other interview guys or women. I don't shoot for answers, right? But I just talked to Sinead Kavanaugh on Thursday, and she said, I'm going to the States for Conor's fight. And I go, well, this is after everything's been out there. So if your flight's still booked, that's all the reassurance I need. What do you make on kind of this unknown that we're dealing with Conor McGregor right now?
I'll say two things. Number one, if Conor doesn't fight, that's retirement right there. I don't see the MMA fan base, outside from the hardcores who love Conor to death, getting invested again in a Conor fight. It would be, I've been burned too many times. It's come too close. That everything's set up for Conor. Chandler's the most beatable guy possible at 155 at the elite level. The whole Ultimate Fire thing was set up for him. The USADA thing was set up for him. It won't get better. If you don't do it now, you're not going to do it, in my opinion. I think if he doesn't fight now, it's retirement, number one. Number two, the only person who knows exactly what's going on is Conor. And Dana White compared him to Muhammad Ali in terms of the mental warfare side of it, right? Ali was also better than every other effing heavyweight of his era. People, I think, overestimate mental warfare. Oh my God, I psyched him out at the win. Guys, the better fighter wins 9 times out of 10. Now, if you and I are equal, and I do a little gamesmanship, maybe that gives me a little advantage. You have to be better than the opposition. Ali won because he was better, right? Yeah, was he good at the trash talk? Yeah, did he get people psyched out? He also had lightning in his hands and he was unhittable. And, give me those things before you give me the psychological warfare. So people who are saying Conor's playing games and all stuff, I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying we tend to overestimate the effect that has on a fight. Chandler is a madman who's all, dude, you follow that guy on social media? His
Yeah.
workouts are like, holy God, like, dude, calm down, you're gonna hurt yourself, bro. Like, just putting up crazy weight in these explosive drills. Now, he has his tactical problems, but the idea that you get Michael Chandler to like ease off because he doesn't think the fight's gonna happen, F
It's
that.
tough.
So I think people overestimate if this is a psychological thing by Conor, people overestimate the effect it's gonna have on the fight. That's how I feel about it.
But what does this say about Michael Chandler? It's a guy you know very well from his time in Bellator, right? And he's waited and waited and waited. And now we have this situation. I mean, have we now been robbed as MMA fans of some of the best fights for Michael Chandler in the UFC? Or was it, his right to wait this long?
Uh the thing about Mike, and it's hard for me to say this without people kind of clickbaiting me or taking, but I've said it publicly. I'm going to say it again. Mike's problem is fight IQ. He just tends to go out there, throw everything he has in the first couple rounds, and if he can't get you out of there, he tends to fade. He just has a problem pacing himself. If you say he could have fought 3 more times in the amount of times he's been waiting, how many does he win against elite guys? He's 2-3 in the UFC. His only wins are Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson shot. Dan Hooker, still has some decent fights in him, but he's not as elite as he once was. So would he win all 3 of those fights? Would he go, did we not see him go 1-2? So the idea that he's the idea that he's somehow, boy, he got robbed of all these opportunities. I don't know if he wins against elite talent. It's not like he's destined to go 5-0 or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree, and I won't keep you for much longer, but I do want to kind of piggyback off of what we just saw, I believe last
No.
weekend with Dustin Poirier. There was this narrative, and you coming from the wrestling world, and they even had Cody Rhodes of finish the story.
Yeah.
And I think there was so much focus on Dustin Poirier finishing the quote unquote story, but then I asked so many people around in MMA or fans, and I go, how come there was never a Donald Cerrone finish the story? And I'm not comparing the two, you know, inch for inch, but why did it have to be Dustin needed the title? I mean, Dustin has done everything in the sport. The title's the only thing that eluded him thus far. So two things. Why did it have to be this big thing about Dustin being the champion? He put on a great fight against Islam Makhachev, in my opinion. I thought one judge had it tied going into the 5th round, but I think he's just done so many things that his career, he's changed so much for his life. Like, I just couldn't get behind this. He's got to finish the story because he's still one hell of a fighter, and not everyone becomes champion in this sport.
You remember Dan Marino?
Yeah.
Great. I've never once discussed Dan Marino without someone going, never won the biggie, never won a Super Bowl. Guys, when Razor Ramon, right? Scott Hall said it. He goes, nobody gets in this business to fight their way to the middle. You want to be number one or you wouldn't be here. And there is that sense of, a lot of fighters, you say Cowboy Cerrone, didn't have a finished story moment. In my opinion, Donald Cerrone was never there. Like, the one time he fought for the title, Rafael dos Santos, he got housed. We saw the difference between the champions and Donald Cerrone. He's very, very good, but he wasn't there. Dustin had those moments. Man, if he could, to me right now, in the list of best guy to never win the lineal title, he might be number one. Right now, I have Kenny Florian number one. I've always said Kenny, 3 title opportunities in 2 different weight classes, couldn't quite get them. And it took 2 all-time greats, BJ Penn and Jose Aldo, to keep Kenny from being champion. But you could argue that when it's all said and done, that Khabib and Islam might be 2 of the best all time. I don't know if Charles is going to be there yet, but in any other era, he's probably champion. If not for, the Buffalo Bills, is Dan Marino, does he win a Super Bowl at some point? Well, I don't know what to tell you. It's the problem is that he was so close, closer than Cowboy Cerrone, closer from other guys we could put in that conversation. So I think it's a compliment that people go, man, if you could just finish that story. Because other guys were like, yeah, I think your road is done. Let's just hang him up. I think it's a compliment that he got that kind of attention when he did.
I think to that point, and this is probably one of my last questions here. Do you want Dustin? Do you think it's smart for Dustin to come back and fight?
No, nope. I, we've seen where you're going to go. You're right there. You know, I don't know if you've seen Pulp Fiction. If you're going to make it, you would have made it by now. Like boxers don't have an old timers league. Like this is. We've seen how far you can go, and it's right there. It's everything but number one. Call it a career. Spend time. Look what happened in this last fight. He broke a rib, broke his nose, tore his knee, right?
Yeah,
ACL or
partially
something like
tore
that.
his ACL. Yep.
Right, bro. The next one is a concussion. The next one is, I can't read to my kids because my vision's bad and the lights are on and it bugs my eyes. And dude, don't do that. Sell hot sauce, retire, take all the piles of money you've made and live a good life.
I agree. I agree. Well,
Yeah.
I've appreciated the time, Jimmy. Thank you so much. I want to compliment you because I haven't talked to you since it set the internet on fire.
Yeah.
Thank you for being unapologetically yourself and referring to the Ronda Rousey kind of rant you did. And number one, I was happy to see you get the lot as someone who worked, on the other side on the producing side of your show and seeing all the times where I'm like, all right, the internet's gonna run with it. And I always thought, like, they're missing out, whether it be a great interview or just some great opinions you shared. But once you set Ronda Rousey on fire, the internet ran with it. You were someone, and for those that don't know, we have this robot mic joke because the first time I worked with you, I've always thought of you as holy shit, Jimmy Smith from Bellator. So when you're like, hey, what's up? And I was just like, hello. And that was it because I was like,
Robot Mike.
yeah, because I was so happy to be working and learning from you, which as I told you when, the news was announced, I'm, super grateful to have that opportunity to learn from you in this business. Um, I'm just so thankful that there are people like yourself in this sport, whether it be on the commentary booth or behind a radio mic, because I think combat sports specifically, you not veterans like yourself, but maybe schmucks like myself have to either find a character or find a way to get in the door with a special ticket. And it's quite annoying. So seeing someone be unapologetically themselves, it's a nice bright spot for this business.
Appreciate that, Mike. You're the man. I'll always make time for you, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jimmy.